Usually when we talk about using a compass, there's this expectation of absolute, undeniable reliability.
Right, because it's just physics.
Exactly. You hold it flat in the palm of your hand, the needle spins, and it just points north. It's entirely objective, it's clean, it's comforting, and it's this fixed point in a totally chaotic world.
Yeah, because it responds to the Earth's magnetic field. It really doesn't care about your opinions or, your mood or where you would personally prefer north to be.
No, not at all.
It just tells you the physical truth of your environment.
But then you step into the landscape of human nature. You cross into the territory of our own inner morality, our motivations, and how we justify our behavior to ourselves.
Which is a completely different terrain.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And suddenly you realize you're navigating with a compass where the needle has been secretly magnetized by your own ego.
That is such a dangerous place to be.
It really is. You firmly believe you are heading true north, you are marching forward with absolute conviction, but you're actually just walking in circles, following the invisible pull of your own desires.
Which honestly is the ultimate navigational hazard. We are just incredibly skilled at convincing ourselves that our personal, highly subjective direction is somehow the universal objective truth.
Yeah.
The ego is just brilliant at dressing up its own wants in the clothing of moral necessity.
Well, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're exploring the inner workings of human nature for you, specifically how we deceive ourselves, how our egos can so easily hijack our very best intentions, and the simple grounding practices that can actually snap us back to reality.
It's a heavy topic, but a really necessary one.
Definitely. We're looking at two profound pieces of writing today. One is titled The Question of Acting in the Name of God, and the other is titled Gratitude and Awareness.
Both of which really dig deep into the mechanics of self-awareness.
Yeah, and the massive blind spots we literally all share as human beings. Okay, let's unpack this. The first concept we need to tackle opens with a warning that is honestly a bit chilling.
It really catches you off guard.
It does. It argues that a human being can commit their greatest mistake using the most correct words.
The phrasing there is incredibly deliberate. The text explicitly points out that the tongue may speak truth, yet the heart may be completely elsewhere.
Wow.
Because we generally operate under the assumption that if the words are right, then the action is right. If a person slaps a sacred or noble label onto their behavior, we just assume their underlying intention must be pure.
Right. We take it at face value.
Exactly. But this source strips that illusion entirely away. It forces us to look at how people routinely attach sacred labels to their own petty personal desires.
Let's look at how that actually happens in real time, because the psychology here is fascinating. The argument is that often a person just wants something fundamentally self-serving. They want to win an argument online, or they want to crush a rival at work, they want to assert dominance, or maybe they just want to react defensively because their feelings are hurt.
Right, the core driver is the ego.
Yes, the desire to act comes first. And then, only after that ego-driven desire is fully formed, they go shopping for a moral justification.
They invoke the sacred. They say, I am doing this in the name of God, or I am doing this to protect the core values of our community, or I'm fighting for ultimate justice.
Yeah.
But underneath all that lofty language, they really aren't. They're acting entirely for themselves. They are just using a sacred label as a rhetorical shield to deflect any and all criticism.
Because if I say I'm acting for a supreme moral good, you can't question me without looking like you're attacking the moral good itself.
Exactly. It's a genius defensive strategy.
It really is. It's bulletproof.
It is, and the text highlights a delicate but absolute distinction between two very strong human inclinations. The first is the desire to align with truth. The second is the desire to be right.
And those sound so similar on the surface.
They do, but mechanically they are complete opposites. Aligning with truth requires vulnerability. It requires admitting when you are wrong and actually changing your stance.
Which hurts the ego.
Exactly. The desire to be right, however, requires zero vulnerability. When the desire to be right dominates a person, they are no longer seeking truth at all. They are strictly seeking validation and victory.
The best way I can describe that desire to be right is that it's like putting on a pair of heavy-duty noise-canceling headphones.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Because you aren't listening to the environment anymore. You're just aggressively broadcasting your own playlist to the world and completely tuning out reality.
Yeah, you're isolated in your own echo chamber.
Totally. You can't hear anyone else's perspective. And worse, you can't even hear your own internal inconsistencies. So why is it so incredibly easy to slip from defending a genuine principle to just aggressively defending our own egos.
What's fascinating here is the concept the text introduces called instrumentalizing the sacred.
Instrumentalizing, meaning making it a tool.
Exactly. When you slip into just defending your ego, the sacred, whether that's a religious principle, a moral high ground, or, a political cause you deeply believe in, it goes from being a guiding star to being a blunt instrument.
Wow.
You stop serving the cause and you start making the cause serve you.
You basically weaponize the truth.
Precisely. And when truth becomes a weapon for your ego, it creates this psychological breaking point. At this juncture, the person subconsciously places themselves at the exact center of the universe.
Right.
They absolutize their own perspective. The internal logic loops like this. I am right. Because I am right, whatever action I take must be right. And because my action is right, I can do it in the name of the ultimate good.
That is a terrifying feedback loop.
It really is. Once a person falls into that closed logical trap, they completely stop auditing their own behavior. They become dangerously blind to their own cruelty or their own mistakes because they genuinely believe they are standing on the side of absolute, unquestionable truth.
But if human nature is that skilled at self-deception, how do we actually know we aren't doing this right now? I mean, how do you, listening to this deep dive, know if your actions in a conflict are genuinely aligned with truth, or if you've just trapped yourself in a funhouse mirror of your own ego?
Well, the good news is we don't just have to guess.
Okay, good.
Yeah, the source material provides a very clear mechanical measuring stick. It gives us 3 criteria to constantly test our actions against. It says we must continually ask ourselves, 1, is there justice? 2, is there mercy? And 3, is there measure?
Measure, meaning balance, like not going to extremes.
That's right, not overstepping the bounds. The absolute principle established here is that anything done in the name of a higher truth, in the name of God, cannot contradict those core attributes.
Okay, sense.
So if there is oppression, if there is harshness without mercy, or if there is total imbalance, that action simply does not belong to truth. It does not matter what sacred label you slap on it. People constantly mistake their own unhinged anger for a righteous response, or they mistake their personal harshness for principled strength.
So what does this all mean? Let me push back on this a little bit, because the real-world application of this feels incredibly messy.
Sure, let's get into it.
Let's say someone is fighting a genuinely oppressive system. They are fighting for what they factually believe is a good, truthful cause. But history shows us that anger gets things done. Righteous anger overthrows tyrants. If you demand that someone fighting injustice must simultaneously show, mercy to their oppressor, doesn't that just neutralize their ability to fight? Are we supposed to abandon that righteous energy entirely just to maintain some philosophical idea of measure?
That is the exact tension the text addresses. It's a really valid question. But anger might be an ignition source, but it makes a terrible steering wheel.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
The text establishes a strict, unyielding rule. Where mercy is absent, truth is absent.
Where mercy is absent, truth is absent.
Why? Let's look at the mechanism. The ego requires an enemy to destroy in order to feel superior. Mercy, however, requires a level of empathy that actively dissolves the ego.
Oh, I see.
If your defense of the truth requires you to entirely abandon justice, mercy, or measure, then you are no longer defending the truth. You have become the very toxicity you claim to be fighting. You are just defending your own ego's desire to annihilate the opposition.
Which means the cause doesn't automatically sanitize the method.
It never sanitizes the method. The text contrasts the extreme danger of claiming absolute authority, saying, I am acting with the absolute authority of God or truth, with a much safer, highly self-aware path. The concept it introduces is called true vicegerency.
Wait, vicegerency, that's a heavy, archaic-sounding term. Are we talking about acting as a representative or like a steward rather than the ultimate authority yourself?
Exactly. A vicegerent is a steward. It's the humility to say, I am not the ultimate authority. I am merely trying to align myself with what is right.
The operative word being trying.
Yes. When you say you are trying to align yourself, you acknowledge that you are human, you are fallible, and you must constantly question your own intentions. You might be wrong.
Right.
The author actually includes a beautiful couplet to cement this point for the reader. It goes, do not think that naming him makes all your actions true. If justice is absent within, that voice belongs to you.
That voice belongs to you.
Woo!
That is a punch to the gut.
It really is.
It really drives home that we have to be our own harshest critics when it comes to our underlying motivations. But, this blindness doesn't just happen when we're arguing about morality or launching personal crusades.
No, not at all.
It bleeds right into how we physically perceive our everyday reality. It dictates how we experience a random Tuesday.
The transition from analyzing our actions to analyzing our perception is absolutely vital here. Forgetting isn't just a minor lapse in memory. It is a fundamental, hardwired tendency of human nature. We get used to things.
We suffer from a chronic normalcy bias.
We do. We become accustomed to what is given to us, and once we are accustomed to it, it becomes the baseline. It becomes normal.
Yeah.
The foundational examples the text uses are brilliant because they are just so universal. Health feels ordinary, breathing feels automatic, seeing feels expected. The physical beating of our own heart feels guaranteed, like it's a basic human right.
Right, we don't even think about it.
Exactly. We live our entire lives as if these complex, miraculous physiological processes are owed to us right up until the exact millisecond they're taken away.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because I was reading through these notes and it instantly made me think of our smartphone batteries.
Oh, okay.
Think about the mechanics of how you treat your phone. You carry this literal miracle of technology in your pocket all day long. When it's at 100% or 80% or even 40%, you do not think about the battery at all.
Not once.
You completely ignore the invisible energy that is allowing you to communicate with the entire globe. But the second that battery indicator dips to 1% and turns red, what happens?
Total panic.
You panic. You obsess over it. Your entire reality narrows down to that missing 1% of power. And the argument here is that this is exactly how we interpret our entire existence. We interpret our lives exclusively through the 1% that is missing, rather than the 99% that is functioning perfectly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can actually see the evolutionary reason for this. Our ancestors survived by noticing the 1% threat, right? The rustle in the bushes, the lack of food.
It kept them alive.
Exactly. But today, applying that survival mechanism to modern life takes a devastating psychological toll. The text puts it brilliantly. It says, when the mind is filled with lack, even abundance feels like poverty.
Wow.
If you are fixated on the one desire that remains unfulfilled or the one project that isn't veering your way, you actively diminish the mountain of blessings you currently possess. This leads to a state the text calls inner constriction.
Inner constriction.
Yeah.
It's like trying to look at a beautiful sweeping landscape through a tiny peephole in a door.
Yes, exactly.
The abundance is right there on the other side, but you've physically narrowed your own aperture to only see the dark space around it. You have everything you need to breathe, but you feel like you're suffocating.
That's a perfect visual for the mechanism at play, and the antidote provided is just as mechanical. Sight alone is not enough to cure this constriction. You can have eyes that function perfectly and still be entirely blind to your reality.
So what's the fix?
The text insists that one must actively slow down. A person in constant, frantic motion cannot perceive. You have to physically and mentally become still to perceive everyday miracles. The actual value of a glass of clean water, the warmth of a sincere conversation, the quiet of an early morning, the sheer unlikely gift of a single breath.
Which means we need a measuring stick for our perception, just like we needed the criteria of justice, mercy, and measure to check our egos and our actions. We need a tool to shift from this mental peephole of lack to a wide-angle lens of expansion. The text argues that tool is gratitude. But we need to be careful here because it's not defining gratitude as like a cliche or a hashtag you put on a social media post.
No, it redefines it entirely. Gratitude is presented not as an emotion you passively feel, but as a deliberate way of seeing.
Okay.
And it requires a very intentional shift in the language we use, both out loud and inside our own heads. For example, when a person says, I achieved this, or I built this empire, they actually narrow the blessing.
How so?
They shrink the reality of that success down to the tiny size of their own ego, which inevitably leads to arrogance and boasting.
Because if I achieved this, then I am the sole author of my universe. You're completely cutting off the connection to the reality that you had to be given the health, the opportunity, the functioning brain cells, and literally the oxygen in the room to achieve anything at all.
Yeah. Exactly. The linguistic framing rewires your brain. When a person shifts their language and says, this was given to me, they dramatically expand the blessing. They remember the true source.
That's a huge shift.
It is. It transforms the heart so that a person no longer boasts, but they also don't fall into the trap of ignoring what they have. They recognize the gift, accept it, and move toward genuine awareness.
Let me jump in with a highly practical question on behalf of everyone listening who is currently dealing with a daily grind.
Go for it.
This sounds deeply profound in theory, but when you are rushing through life, you're trying to meet aggressive deadlines, you're sitting in brutal bumper-to-bumper traffic, you're just trying to keep your family afloat, pausing to deeply appreciate a glass of water feels incredibly difficult.
Oh, absolutely.
Honestly, you can feel forced.
Yeah.
How does someone actively make that shift without it just turning into toxic positivity, where you just pretend bad things don't exist?
It's crucial to distinguish between the two. Toxic positivity demands that you ignore the bad. This practice demands that you recognize the good that exists alongside the bad.
Okay, that's a key distinction.
And the text actually acknowledges how difficult this is at first. When you start asking yourself about your blessings, it feels clunky and forced because the mind is simply not used to it. The neural pathways just aren't there yet.
Right, because we're wired for the 1% battery panic.
Exactly. The mind is heavily trained to scan for problems. So the prescription is a daily practice. Simply asking, what is one blessing that was given to me today? The key is the persistence of the habit.
Just one thing, not a giant, exhausting list.
Just one. With persistence, the perception of small things begins to grow. You start noticing a minor ease in your day, a moment of protection you didn't ask for, an unexpected kindness from a stranger. Gradually, the realization dawns. Life was never entirely lacking. You were simply unaware of the baseline. The ultimate balance is recognizing what is given, but never forgetting the giver. The text concludes this thought with another incredibly moving couplet.
Let's hear it.
I counted what I lacked, and my heart grew tight and dim. I noticed just one blessing, and my soul expanded within.
My soul expanded within. That is the exact opposite of that peephole of inner constriction.
It really is.
It really brings the journey of these source materials full circle. We've mapped out some heavy, necessary territory today. We'll look at how to aggressively check our own egos, how to stop weaponizing the sacred just so we can win a petty argument, and how we must demand justice, mercy, and measure from our own actions before we dare to judge anyone else's.
And we explored the mechanics of expanding our awareness by waking up to the everyday miracles, the breathing, the heartbeat, the normalcy that our brains are hardwired to take for granted.
For you listening, recognizing these traps isn't just an intellectual exercise to sound smart at a dinner party. This actively protects you from the dangers of your own self-deception. It stops you from walking in circles with a broken compass.
Yeah.
It brings genuine peace to your daily routine, rather than this exhausting, unwinnable struggle against a life you feel is always shortchanging you.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that bridges the core warnings we've discussed today.
All right.
If human nature is truly hardwired to get so accustomed to our blessings that we become totally blind to them, and if our egos are so quick to use sacred ideals just to justify our own selfish desires, what if our moments of greatest frustration, or even our sudden losses, aren't just random cruelties of the universe?
Okay, where are you going with this?
What if the intense disruptions in our lives, the moments when the battery drops to 1%, or when our self-righteous arguments blow up in our faces, are actually the exact alarm bells we need? What if those painful jolts are perfectly designed mechanisms intended to break our habitual blindness and finally force us to wake up?
Wow. That is definitely something to sit with. Maybe the disruption isn't the enemy at all. Maybe the disruption is the cure. Sometimes you need the compass to break, so you're forced to look up at the actual stars to find your way. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. Take a breath, notice a blessing, and we will catch you next time.